Um, it is for us such a joy to be with you today, and I'm excited because I just so sense that our Abba is so ready to reveal himself. And why don't you just take a moment and just say, Papa, I'm ready for you to show me stuff that I haven't seen before. I'm reminded of John 5, where Jesus prays and he says, the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself does. And even greater things than these will he show you, so that you may be astonished. Thank you, Papa. I've so enjoyed the last few days. We both have. Thank you for the invitation to be here. We have thoroughly enjoyed the connection with friends, making new friends, the speakers. And one of the impressions that started building through listening to the various speakers and the breakout classes is that we are searching for words and searching for concepts to try and point towards a reality that's larger than our language. And for many of us, this transition into a God that is more present, a God that is more embracing than what we've ever imagined, it is this impression and this encounter that has slowly but surely convinced us that this God is more amazing than the stories we've been told about him. We heard last night from Steve, and his story is so much like many of us, that just the realization that the embrace we've experienced is extended to those whom we have excluded. That changes the narrative and the story enormously. And so that part of the story, the extent of God's embrace and how it has changed to where we are now, the process by which that happens, the process by which our stories and our narratives are transformed, is really what I want to speak to you about this morning. And maybe I'll start with that scripture in John 5:20, where he speaks about astonishment. Do you know that you cannot be astonished and certain at the same time? Think of a moment in which you were astonished. The experience of astonishment is something that decenters you. It's something that throws you off balance. It is something that confronts you with a reality that doesn't fit into your framework of interpretation. It's an encounter that does not conform to your story. And in that moment of encounter, you've got to decide, do I want truth or certainty? Truth is so much more amazing than certainty. Now, when I met Mary Ann, and I kind of fell in love with her even before I saw her. But then I saw her. And then a few weeks later, I actually built up the courage and found the words to express what happened in me when I saw her, because in that moment of encounter, I kind of lost myself. I forgot who I am. I forgot my history. I forgot that this girl is way out of my league. I forgot it all, and I was just mesmerized. And that's why we call it falling in love. It's not an encounter that you step into neatly. I wonder if you've got something to tie this up with. That would be great. Thank you, Mark. So that encounter that leaves you astonished, can you see that is not the same experience as being certain? I'm going to draw some nuanced differences between certainty and astonishment. And at the end, we'll hopefully redeem certainty. But please bear with me as we walk through this. Thank you. So certainty and astonishment are not the same things. If you see a magnificent sunrise or sunset, something that awes you, in that moment of astonishment, the best description of that encounter is wordless wonder. It is beyond our language. And I'm saying this because I really hope that as we leave the narrow story that we had about who God is and who we are, as we leave that behind and we start embracing a much more expansive and amazing God and amazing involvement in our lives, that we do not simply construct just an alternative story in which we cage this God once again, but that we actually move beyond that place of trying to capture truth with words and start learning the skill of setting truth free, of pointing beyond our words to a reality that's larger than our statements and our doctrines and our concepts, into an encounter. So, certainty and astonishment. Let me give another example. Certainty and possibility. If something is possible, it is not certain. And if something is certain, it's not possible. Okay? Think about it. Or just receive it. You cannot reduce possibility to certainty. We're gonna get to what this means to your life. So just stick with me, because that's really where we want to go, is what does this look like in the way in which we live? Do we simply just have another narrative, another story that we tell people now, or does it change the way in which we engage with others, with ourselves, with our world? Certainty and possibility are mutually exclusive. If something's certain, it's no longer possible. And if something's possible, it's not certain. Let's take it one step further. We often, I think, confuse certainty with faith. If I have to If I have to tell you or ask you, what is the opposite of faith? Many people would answer, doubt. But maybe doubt is not the opposite of faith. Maybe certainty is the opposite of faith. Let's just look at Hebrews 12, this celebration of the heroes of faith. And each one of those heroes, you would see when God calls them, He doesn't call them out of instability into greater stability, out of their chaos into greater order, out of the unfamiliar into something more familiar. God always calls us out of the known into the unknown, out of what you're comfortable with into the adventure of what you don't quite grasp yet. Paul writes in Philippians that, and we would think, Paul, I mean, he should have his doctrine sorted out. He writes 2/3 of the New Testament. But in Philippians, he says, guys, I actually don't quite have a grasp on this yet. But for the rest of my life, I'm going to try and get a hold of what got a hold of me. Woo! This is something more than just an alternative idea. So the opposite of faith might not be doubt. Now, you know, there's parts of doubt that's bad, and we'll get to it, but I want to speak to you a little bit about divine doubt. And you won't hear many sermons on divine doubt, so enjoy this. You see, doubt is something that works hand in hand with faith. When Paul is on his way to persecute believers because he is certain that God is on his side, that his doctrine is right and those people are wrong, and he's going to correct them one way or the other. And in that pursuit and zeal of certainty, he encounters the living Jesus. In that moment in which he is thrown off, descented, astonished, he says, Lord, who are you? It is that moment in which he doubts that the God he always believed in, the certainty that he always stood on, it's in that moment of doubt that the most authentic faith is birthed. You see, faith and doubt works together in this way. Let's start off before I get there. Let's just a step before that. Very early on in life, and this is a necessary stage for all of us, we pursue certainty because we believe that certainty gives us security. And in that pursuit of certainty and greater security, we start surrounding ourselves with the predictable. We start predicting our future based on the accurateness of how we've interpreted the past. We apply the logic of cause and effect, and we become more and more certain about who we are, more and more certain about who God is in this pursuit of certainty, in this pursuit of security. Now, the promise that certainty makes, the temptation that if you can be certain you are secure, eventually maybe certainty does deliver on that promise to some extent. Because you know what? A prison is very secure. And we become more and more certain of who we are and who God is. And we define the boundaries better and better. And the more certain you become, the less room for astonishment is left in your life. The more certain, the more you've got to be right, the less room there is to embrace possibilities beyond your rightness. It is within that prison that the gospel is this gloriously good news that you are wrong. That this prison of certainty is far too small to contain who you are and who God is. And it's in that prison that doubt begins to break down the boundaries of certainty that you've erected over so many years. That's divine doubt. That is God whispering to you, your ideas about me are too small. You've outgrown your concepts about who I am. And even though you go through turmoil when you go through doubt, God is not worried at all. Because while doubt is starting to break down the borders and the limitations that you've built, faith begins to reach beyond those boundaries to possibilities that you have not imagined before. Jesus introduces us to a God for whom all things are possible. We've created a God because of our insecurity, for whom all things are certain. Jesus has no need and has no desire to reveal to you a God for whom all things is certain. He reveals to us a God for whom all things are possible. Sorry, I didn't even see what time. Okay, I've got time. The God of possibility, not of certainty. I quickly want to add one more thing, certainty versus truth. In Colossians 1:15, we read that Jesus, our normal translation says, is the visible representation, the image of the invisible God. In the Greek, that little word image is where we get our word icon from. It actually says Jesus is the icon of the invisible God. Now, to make it real simple, on your laptop or on your phone, you've got little icons. But that icon is not really what it's all about. That icon gives you access to an application that is much more functional, much more larger, can do much more than what the icon can do. Jesus is this point of access into the invisible God. He's the image of the invisible God. Later on in that same chapter, verse 26, it speaks about the mystery that was hidden for ages and generations has now been revealed. What we have done is, instead of continuing to engage with Jesus and the Father as the unveiling and the revelation of the mystery, we have made Jesus the exhaustion of the mystery. Jesus does not come to exhaust the mystery of God. You know how we've done that? We've basically said, okay, Jesus has perfectly revealed the Father, and I have the perfect understanding of who Jesus is. And so now I know exactly who God is. Now, Jesus is still today and forever will be unveiling, being the revelation of the God who remains invisible. The God who remains a mystery. The God whose mystery is so enormous that he can reveal himself and reveal himself and reveal himself, and you can see more and more and more, but he remains inexhaustible. I think we are more in love today probably than 29 years ago when we got married. And part of that, you know, when we first met, I didn't know anything about Mary Ann's story. I didn't even know what I knew. I just knew I want to be with her. It's the first time I fasted without even thinking about it because I just forgot to eat. I just wanted to know where she is. Over the 29 or 30 years, we have come to know one another much more intimately, and I know her story. She knows my story, and we have expanded that story enormously. But one of the things that totally, that I just cannot neglect, or that I'm becoming more and more aware of, is no matter how much I can say or describe or know about her, there's a depth beyond that skin which is beyond words, which is beyond language. There's, in every person you meet, there's a depth of mystery that cannot be exhausted with language. I'm so glad we're learning new language to describe our Abba more accurately. But even while we do that, let's not lose this sense of wonder of a God that's beyond even our latest and greatest revelation. A God whose depth and whose person wants to continue to astound us. And the end result of this message is not another person that's certain, but are people who are astonished and in love and with stammering lips try to describe a reality. You see, the early church was born not because they thought they found the answer. The early church was born with people whose minds was aflame with questions. Go read it in Acts chapter 2. They ran out with fire on their heads into the streets, not saying we have the answer, saying, what do these things mean? People are much more attracted to your wonder and your astonishment than to your answers and to your certainty. You can be just as unappealing being certain about the ultimate destiny of humanity as you are being certain about eternal torment. It's not our certainty that draws people in. It's our astonishment at the God that's more present, a God that's going to even surprise us. Even after we've told our best story about what could possibly be the end. He wants to astound us. I want to quickly close with, I haven't even got to my scripture yet, but I want to close with this little story, just as an example to say, what does this understanding produce? How does this word become flesh? Now, Mary Ann and myself, when we were 18 and we met and we started doing mission work in Africa, the verse that grabbed our hearts was in 2 Corinthians 5 that said, God has reconciled the world to himself, not holding their trespasses against them. And we were kind of taught and brought up in a kind of community that said you must first make sure that they know that there are trespasses and God's holding it against them, and once they're convinced about that, then you can bring the good news. But we kind of thought, let's just have God's attitude. If he doesn't hold their trespasses against them, let's just go with that good news. And that grew over the years. For the past 9 or 10 years, we again just moved constantly, traveling different places. And about 3 years ago, I was on a very rare occasion traveling on my own in the UK. And I was somewhere reading my Kindle, and this little advert popped up, Zen and the Birds of Appetite. And I thought, I almost just blew past it, but it was by Thomas Merton, whom I knew. And I thought, I know nothing about Zen, but I've read through so many thick theological books. Let me read a bit of Zen just for entertainment. And so I downloaded the book, started reading, and I was on the 2nd or 3rd chapter, and I got this email from I think it was a Methodist church that I was speaking at the next week. And they said, Andre, you're coming here next week, excited about that, but we have a Zen community here. And I mean, my hair stood up because I kind of just sensed the Lord in this whole thing setting me up for this. I said, we have a Zen community who would love to engage with us, and they've been trying to for a while, but we've got no clue what to do with this. But seeing that you coming, are you willing to engage with it? I said, yeah, I'd love to. I know nothing about Zen except the 3 chapters I've read, but isn't that what conversation is about? And so they set it up, and the afternoon before I was going to the Zen Center, and I thought I'll make some of my Christian friends really nervous and invite them to go with me to this meditation center. And about 20 of them pitched up. And that afternoon, as I prayed about what to speak about, if I had an opportunity to speak, I didn't know the format, I thought maybe something non-confrontational. Let's start with a concept like beauty. Let's just kind of get into something pleasant. And as I was praying about this, I just felt the Father said, no, I want you to speak about the uniqueness of Jesus and how he brought our concepts about God and about ourselves to naught. See, Jesus didn't come to his community and said, here I am, the Messiah, I've come to confirm how right you are. Isn't that what we hope the second coming will be? Jesus, please just come and show them we were right. But Jesus comes and he says, despite your thousands of years of Bible study, no one knows the Father. And he brings our ideas and our concepts to naught. So I thought, okay, well, hopefully I don't have a chance to share because I'm a little bit nervous about that. And we went to the center, I knocked on the door, and the high priest opened, and he just grabbed me, and he wouldn't let go. And he whispered something about, your boss told me you're coming, or something like, I didn't quite get it, but I hugged and let go, and we all sat. I sat with him on the floor. My Christian friends was a bit suspicious of that, so they sat on their chairs. Some of them. So I said, how does this work? Do you ask me a question? Do I ask you questions? And they said, no, could you please just tell us about Jesus? And I said, yeah. I'm so glad I recorded this. It's on our website. I just recorded the whole thing. Started telling them the story, probably 40 minutes, and by the end, the one lady, Elam, said, we have never heard Jesus presented like this to us. And she said, since we invited you, which was a few days before, the previous Tuesday, since we invited you, Jesus kept on showing up in our meditations. I said, oh. And she said, and Jettai, the high priest, he said, yes, this morning as I was praying, Jesus came to me and he lifted up a cross and he said, this is where all your ideas come to an end. And I said, well, seeing that Jesus shows up while you sing your mantra, can you teach us your mantra? Now that made my friends even more nervous. Can you see that we're not just talking about the doctrine of a God that's inclusive? We're talking about the kind of hot embrace of a conviction that God is already involved in people who doesn't believe what I believe, who's not from my culture, who's not even from my religion. God is already involved in them. And so one of the ladies translated this Zen Mantra. Amazing. This was written before the Bible. Now, this is an ancient mantra. And it goes something like this. Source of our existence, we acknowledge your beauty. We embrace you. I mean, the whole thing as she went through, we were just in tears. We said, this is Jesus. So they taught us all the mantra, and we sang this mantra with them. And Jesus showed up in a beautiful way. A year later, Marianne was traveling with me through this area, and we had a lunch appointment with Elam and Jettai. And as we sat, I said to Jettai, can you tell Marianne this story from your point of view when Jesus, the vision of Jesus you had, because she heard it from me, but I want her to hear it from you. And he said, there was no vision. Jesus came to me, and he has been with me ever since. One of the beautiful things that has happened in that community is when we had our Christian fellowship with that community, we invite them to come and do a tea ceremony and a meditation. And many of those beautiful Christians go and attend their meditations as well. It would have freaked me out completely 10 years ago. But this is what I'm getting at. If what you are busy with is causing you to love others, you are busy with the same God revealed in Jesus Christ, no matter what your label is. And if what you believe causes you to do violence and exclude and hate others, even if it has the label of Christian over it, it's just as demonic as the most violent Islamic fundamentalism there is. It's not labels that unveils the reality below. And this is what brings me to my text very quickly, Acts 10. Peter's conversion, I call it. Because Peter has been a believer for a number of years now. He has embraced people with this amazing message, But interestingly, Peter lands up in Joppa. Joppa is the same place where Jonah got this ridiculous message of going to the Ninevites and loving them. And he said, no way. Peter is in the same town. And he's up on the roof before supper time. And suddenly he sees a vision that astounds him. This is outside of his frame of reference. Everything he taught was unclean, evil, not of your culture or your religion, comes down in a sheet. And the voice says, kill and eat. Partake. And Peter is convinced this angel has got the wrong slide. No, Lord, don't do that. Get the right slide up. But 3 times the same vision comes. At the same time, there's a knock on the door, and the Lord speaks to him and says, I've sent these people, go with them without hesitation. And that was supposed to be the theme of this message, is to engage with people from other faiths and convictions without hesitation. Because what has happened is that Cornelius, we don't know what he believed, but what he believed caused him to have compassion on the poor. And an angel appears to Cornelius and says, God has seen your compassion, your work. And he wants to reveal himself to you more fully, so send these men to go get Peter. And when Peter eventually gets to him the next day, he says, God has revealed to me to not call any man unclean or unholy. So, in conclusion, what this new vision of God does for us is stir up something much greater than a fantasy about post-mortem existence. There's beautiful things there. But what it does, even more significantly, is it causes you to see a whole new creation. 2 Corinthians 5. Behold, all things are new. We've always quoted that verse as if it's speaking about you are a new creation. Therefore, if any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. That's not actually what it says. A few verses before it says, therefore, if one has died for all, then all have died. That word if is not conditional, it's a conclusion. He doesn't say if one have to, did one die? He's not asking a question. That's why many translations now says, since one has died, for all, therefore all have died. It's the same construct in verse 17 that says, since every man is in Christ, there is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, all things are new, and all things are of God. Wow. See, this gospel opens your eyes to the beauty in the ordinary, to the spectacular in the next coffee appointment that you have, the next person that you encounter, to see them with this joyful expectation that there's a part of God reconnecting with God in this encounter. God is waiting to be recognized and appreciated in every encounter we have. In Him, we live, we move, we have our being. He is not far from each one of us. In you, God lives, God moves. God has His being. He is excited about your life. Because in you, He has an opportunity to be Himself in a unique way. You know, every time you love, God is being Himself in you. So I want to conclude on that. And I want to redeem certainty a little bit as a last statement. There's many things you're welcome to be certain about. You know, there's many things I need to be certain about just to function as a normal human being. There's nothing wrong with being certain about stuff. Even my beliefs, there's some things that I just know I'm right. You know? I believe that. But do not confuse certainty with faith. Faith is an openness to a story that is yet unfolding. Faith is an openness to a God who wants to astound you and surprise you. Because this God in His very nature is possibility, not certainty. I want to add as well, so beautifully last night, some thoughts about what different people said. And Heisenberg, one of the guys that had to do with quantum physics, he said that, you know, your first sip of science might make you an atheist, but keep on drinking. God is waiting at the bottom of that cup. And he developed something called the Heisenberg principle of uncertainty, which basically, you know, Newtonian physics says that we can calculate exactly what's going to happen if we have all the information about the force of this object hitting that force. We know what reaction it would cause. On a smaller level, what Heisenberg said is, even if you have all the information of the influence that you're going to exert on an electron, you cannot with certainty say how it's going to react. Not because we don't have all the information, because at the very lowest level of reality, there is always more than one possibility. The very fabric of reality is not certainty, but possibility. This God is excited about your life. Your life is His joy. And you know, you cannot really experience joy without surprise. We've imagined such a boring God. A God who knows everything, who's not surprised by anything, and it gives us security. But do you know what it means to God? To God, if nothing new happens, that's the very definition of boring. No, God is the God of possibility. The God who's excited about the way in which your life can unfold. So, Papa, we thank you for this message of a God who has always surprised us and a God who wants to continue to surprise us. I ask that you open our eyes once again to stand in wordless wonder at the depth of the mystery and beauty that you've invested in each one of us. To open our eyes anew at the beauty that's available in every encounter and every person we meet. That we can live without hesitation. That we can go without hesitation. Knowing that you create possibility after possibility after possibility to love extravagantly. We honor you, Papa. Amen.
Yes, Saint Bonaventure from the 1200s said, God is an intelligible space whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. He's within, but he's not confined or enclosed. He's without and beyond all, but he's not excluded from them. He's above, but he's not aloof. He's below, but he's not cast down. He simply is all in all. And how can we measure the expanses of you? We try to confine